Welcome to episode 21 of the Total Hockey Training Podcast. I'm your host, Sean Scahan. And before I introduce my next guest, I just want to let everyone know about Total Hockey Training on Train Heroic. You can go on to Train Heroic, search up Total Hockey Training. It's $39 a month. You can get 7 days free to try it out. We are currently in our postseason phase, and I am on there every day communicating with my athletes who are on board right now. And also, if you like the show, share it, and make comments, whatever you want to do. Ask questions. I encourage that. So I want to get into my next guest. I'm lucky to have my good buddy, my good friend, Mike Potenza. Mike is the current director of performance for the Golden State Warriors. And Mike has a long career with the San Jose Sharks, the University of Wisconsin, and several other places. And Mike, welcome to the show, pal.
Thanks for having me. I think we've been having these conversations for a long time, so why not?
Yeah, might as well get it
put it
on
out there.
video and record it, right? So
Yeah.
no, so I know all about you. I know your background and your story and all that, but tell the listeners who may not know who you are, buddy. Like talk about growing up in Rhode Island and everything that got you to where you are today, bud.
Yep. Yeah, from Providence, Rhode Island originally. Grew up not very far from Providence College, played youth hockey there from about 9 to 12, and that was kind of, still my favorite sport, still my favorite love. And when I got to like 13, I kind of transitioned out of hockey because it became expensive, for a single mom, and travel was a bear. So I was still playing baseball. I was still playing soccer, and those were my two big sports. And I went to high school playing both. And then junior year picked up lacrosse actually in high school. So 3-sport athlete, loved playing everything. I think that was back in the day. Not during the horse and carriage time, Sean, but it was pretty close. But at the same time, that was when the kid could play 3 sports and transition to different sports seasonally, right?
Yeah.
Now it's the systems aren't, I don't think, because I have 3 kids. I don't think the systems are set up really
Not
for that
seasonally. No.
that to be ideal anymore. It would just make their schedules insane and kind of create that anxiety and pressure and just no downtime to be a kid. But so I went to college at Springfield College. I played soccer there. That was my main sport. Springfield was great for me and met a lot of good people, classmates, mentors, who are upperclassmen and master students. And then I had an advisor named Margaret Jones who really helped me. I think she helped the industry. She was amazing for the NSCA. She was amazing for Springfield. I do give her a lot of credit and kind of always credit her as that angel on my shoulder to kind of keep me focused and kind of in the right direction of where the industry was going and where the profession was going and where my best internships would become, which my first one was with you in summer of 98. I was a sophomore. Actually, I was transitioning. I was coming into BU with Glenn Harris. You were kind of exiting the spring semester, and that's where we first hooked up. And then that's when I was an intern, you worked for Mike, and I ended up working for him too. So after Springfield, they took me to Boston University for my master's. And then after that, held jobs at Harvard, held jobs at Colgate University for a short time, and then on to Wisconsin, working with men's and women's hockey, wrestling and softball. And then after 4 years at Wisconsin, I went to the San Jose Sharks for 16 years. And after 16 years, if you're a hockey follower or, if you follow the game in the NHL, you'll know that San Jose was in a major transition right now. And, not having that stability or clarity and things like that, I was presented with an opportunity to go work with Rick Celebrini, who was a longtime friend, who actually helped us rehab a lot of the Sharks guys because he was a private therapist at the time in Vancouver, but he's now the vice president of health and performance for the Warriors. So Rick presented me with an opportunity. The timing was really good because of the kind of unknowns with San Jose. I jumped at the chance and love it to this minute and love it every day, learning a lot, still at this point in my career, I'm getting to learn, getting to see how a different system is run. I'm getting to see how a bigger system is run in terms of staff and disciplines. So that's kind of me in a nutshell, I'll leave the I'll leave the risque parts out for the listeners.
Oh, I love it, buddy. So 1998, that's 26 years ago. Long time ago, huh?
That's scary. I didn't even think of it like that, but yeah.
Yeah, that was a while back. And there's only a few of us at the time who like wanted to become strength and conditioning coaches then. And that was hard work. There was hard, you're on your feet the whole time, but man, you're learning a lot. It was obviously you had Mike, but you also had guys like Walter Norton, who I thought is, still think he's an incredible coach, really good motivator, good energy. Who else was there? I know Emma was there for a little bit as well, Emma Johnson.
Yeah.
Other
Hayes,
people,
Sean Hayes, who was, a mentor for me at Springfield, was there a little bit in the summer times. Ed Manti
and
ran
Manti, yep,
the southern, the South Bay, or South Shore facility with Canton. So
yeah,
Glenn Harris and I helped him. Blue Hills Middle School, and then Canton Sportsplex. When Mike
right,
branched out into those areas.
yeah.
Yeah, we had some great
Was
great.
was Danny Nicolo in the Canton complex?
Yeah, he was an intern, and Danny was a year behind me at Springfield. So yeah,
Okay,
there's a full kind of a lineage in a circle there. Yeah.
yeah. So I connect with Danny here, and he's the football strength and conditioning coach at Minnesota.
Yeah.
Great
Oh,
guy,
that's great.
just a
That's
great
great.
guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
hmm
So I want to talk about the Natty at Wisconsin, but first I want to talk. I asked Mike Boyle about this. What was it about Springfield College? Like, why does it turn out some really, really high end strength and conditioning coaches, sports performance people, in your opinion?
I think it's a multitude of factors, right? I think Springfield has always been committed as an institution to be the best at physical education and servicing students to get their degrees in that. And then you have sports management, then you have sports medicine, and now, and even strength and conditioning has grown to human performance, exercise physiology, and all that. So they were always committed, and they had some amazing teachers, professors, I should say, advisors, and then they would also do research there. So it was great. So as an undergrad, you learned in the trenches from the practical side, but you were also seeing concurrently who was doing research, whether it be sports nutrition or whether it be, um, power output testing or on field testing and things like that. So you really got an awesome practical knowledge base, but also that's obviously the research base, and you could have gone really either track. You know what I mean? Um, and I think Springfield for their students, and this is where Dr. Jones really worked really hard, and they continue to do so now, kind of um, in her model, and the fact that they're placing students in a lot of really good places.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Dr. Jones always challenged me to not go to somewhere in New England, like, because we already did that, like we went to BU and got an amazing experience with Glenn and Mike there. And then I went to Mike's place and got an amazing experience there. But she challenged me to go to International Performance Institute with Mark Verstappen. So I spent the summer there. She challenged me to my senior year to go to University of Miami and work with the football team there with Tom Moffitt, who was there at the time, but also transitioning. So, you know, you branch out and you create these relationships, and you create these experiences for students that, by the time we left there, and you have this resume of, I was at IPI, I was at BU, I was at Mike's, and I was at University of Miami.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's a strong point of it. I know now, I mean, in trying to keep up with it, I know UConn's got an amazing program. I think Bridgewater State's got an amazing program. So there's other schools that are now, it's blown up, as you can imagine, in the
Mm-hmm.
20 plus years that since we started. Um, so there's a lot more programs out there now, which is great.
I love that. I have a lot of respect and admiration for Dr. Jones. She brought a few students out to a training session out in Anaheim one summer. I think the NSCA was at the Anaheim Convention Center, I believe. And then I had a good relationship with her as well. Whenever we would go play the Capitals, we would always have lunch, and her son would
Yeah,
come to practice and meet up.
yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
a lot of respect for that program that she built at Springfield, and not only yourself, but all the other people who was under her guidance. So that's really cool. So I mentioned it earlier, you did win a national championship at the University of Wisconsin. What was that like, buddy?
It was amazing. I mean, I was fortunate enough to win on the men's side and the women's side in the same year, and
Wow. Yeah.
two amazing staffs. Like Mike Eves was the head coach of the men's side, and Mark Johnson, who's a longtime NHLer, was, the coach of the women and still is. And they are continuing to have a successful program. But that was, other than Boston University, that was my main exposure outside of Hockey East to a massive program. And
Mm.
or BU ties to Wisconsin. That's how I got there. But it was awesome. I mean, we had the cream of the crop players, and they were trying to resurrect that program, and it was important for the head coach, and even both head coaches to kind of have the foundation of training for their athletes. Like they were going to work, they were going to be the best, most in shape team out of any team they competed against. Their style dictated that they needed to be fast and they needed to be well conditioned. So there was a huge amount of buy-in, which was great. I think that's what any performance coach or strength coach wants to hear, is that you're going to get the support from the top, right? And at any level. And um, but it was awesome. I made some great friendships and relationships with staff. I made some awesome relationships and friendships with players. I was fortunate enough to, and then go on to the NHL, which you may have probably had this experience from Boston College on to Anaheim, is that we had guys that played at Wisconsin. We had guys that I
Yeah.
remember in the league that played at Wisconsin were on different teams, or, and even with San Jose, some of those Wisconsin guys came there. And then when I got to San Jose, it was like we had a bunch of guys that were from Mike's in the summertime, who were
Yeah.
Bruins or played in the league or trained with Mike in the summer. So it was a good transition for me. But Wisco was awesome. My wife and I loved living there. The support for the team was amazing. We had 15,000 people at every game. It was awesome. It was great.
I love it. Yeah. And Cole and the Cole Center does get rocking. I know they're gonna new coach there. They're gonna get things going. So talk about that transition from Wisco to San Jose. Like, I just want to run this by you. Like, I guess when I had started with the Ducks back in the day, the strength and conditioning position wasn't established as it is today by any means.
Mhm.
There were some personal trainers, performance coaches who didn't necessarily work in the team environment that were directors of the NHL teams. And when I'm saying that, I'm not saying they weren't qualified to do that. What I'm saying is, did you find it like, for me, going from college hockey to the NHL, like, I didn't know any better than working with the team. And I brought that same energy and mentality to the Ducks. I think, they had a personal trainer, I should say, previously, and then, they wanted something more team wise. And it was a seamless transition for me. I didn't know anything better. I didn't really know about, like, these are pros and not college kids. They don't want to be,
Yep.
here at a certain time, whatever. I didn't really care. I just came in and did it with their feedback, and interpreted to, like, this is what we're going to do now, and it worked. But talk about your transition to the professional ranks.
Yeah. I had that naivety going in, like, I mean, like, but much like you, like, I put my head down and went to work, like I was brought in there because they wanted to improve the program at the time. They did have a long time strength coach there who was there for about 9 years.
Hmm.
They wanted to elevate the program. And I think, you and I came in at a point where we had some amazing experiences. The profession was getting smarter. It was changing because we worked on a ton of different, strength qualities, but we were also doing programs in Excel. We were, it was growing. You know what I mean? We were, and we were part of that change, I think, in the NHL. Um, I got great support there. I kind of knew, I was like, all right, this isn't college. Like I have a window to work with these guys. It's not like I can get them up early, work them out. They go to class and then I'll see them again at practice. There was a window that was centered around the ice time that you had to get everything in. You had to do a big sell job on a lot of the guys, and you had to hold guys accountable. I mean, I was 27 when I took the job in San Jose, and I had veterans that were almost 10 years older than me.
Hmm.
Then I had guys that were my age, and then I had guys who were 19 years old, so um, it was all over the map. It was the biggest age span I had ever worked with, other than working with Mike privately and then some obviously pro veteran guys, but those were one-offs. Like those guys all wanted to be there, you know.
Hmm.
But that was a big piece. That was something I had to be confident in and learn. It was to keep guys accountable to what we were doing and stand strong to it and not let, the inmates run the asylum, if you will, because nothing would have ever got done. We wouldn't have elevated that program, and we would have been hurt all the time. You know how it goes. You know how the dominoes fall, right?
Yeah.
So so I took it upon myself to you know work really hard with each guy. Didn't matter if they were a Art Ross Trophy winner, Hart Trophy winner, or MVP or whatever, or just a guy they called up from the Worcester Sharks at the time. I try to work with every single guy and be on the floor. And I hated sitting at my desk, and I still do, because that really doesn't do anything, But I think, from the support that we had, and then the program, the culture grew. We were trying to build a culture there too because of the change when I came in. So I think we were really successful in it. We had guys buy in, and I think it was those hard conversations that helped in holding guys accountable, and guys trusting what you're trying to do from a training standpoint, and it making sense to them in hockey and how it's going to transition or transfer to their game. It's like Mike says all the time, like, no one cares how much you know until they know how much you care. Like,
Hmm.
that's freaking true. They can see it, they can smell it. You know what I mean? If you're there for the right reason, or you're there for the wrong reasons.
Oh, I agree with that. And that was a challenging part because sometimes a player might think, oh, the coach is all over me. And like you have to do a good job of not throwing your coach under the bus by any means.
Mhm.
He's most likely he's correct in terms of on ice play, but you have to get on the player side to help him improve so he can handle that better or whatever it is and become his friend, without, like I said, without undermining the head coach. And that's a tough challenge, especially when your head coach could be tough on a lot of guys, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's
The
also the
big boy
fun part.
conversations,
Yeah.
big boy conversations. There's no sugarcoating it. It's like you got to talk to them like men. I think I got the farthest with guys who were difficult to deal with when it was just open and honesty, and you're not going to tell them what they want to hear all the time, but
Yeah.
they, so again, big boy conversation, and they gotta
Right.
do it if they want to keep playing.
And something that I think is important with professionals, sometimes some of these players are so damn talented and good, like, they are going to do what they want to do because they're
Right.
successful at doing it. And if you
Mhm.
can make little minor tweaks to help them maybe avoid an injury or two along the way, I think that goes a long way as well. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Like they have this preconceived plan in their mind, or someone told them, but now we look at it from a different lens, and it can help them long term. Nobody disagreed with me when I said, look, I I know you don't want to do this, but I'm trying to get you to play at a high level right now, but I'm also trying to extend your career for however long you want to play. You want to make whatever, $2 million this year, or do you want to make $2 million every year for the next 10 years? You need resiliency, you need longevity. And, it's like you tell them what they don't want to hear, and they're like, yeah, you're right. It's like,
Mm.
or an aha moment, so the activation stuff, the shit they don't want to do, like the injury prevention stuff, or the lifting heavy, or stuff they don't want to do, and it suddenly becomes, all right, I need this. You
Yeah.
know, it's, it's like Brussels sprouts. You don't like them, but
Right.
they're good for you either way.
Or
So,
or the quote, the time wasters, right?
yeah, yeah, yeah. Time wasting. Yep, yep.
So no, that's great. And you know what? Sometimes it's going to go the other way. Sometimes a player might be like, I ain't doing it. And, that's reality, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. And that's just the way it goes. And so, I just remember those Sharks teams being ultra, ultra competitive. I mean, I remember when they got Jumbo, Joe Thornton.
yeah.
I was like, oh my God, like he's going to be in our division, blah, blah, blah. And there was some battles between the Ducks and the Sharks, and there was a playoff round that was pretty heated. And then you guys did go to the Stanley Cup Finals in 2016. Oh,
Yep.
yeah,
15.
2016. And that was a good series, lost to the Penguins.
Yep.
What was that like getting all the way there?
It was great. I think, and maybe you agree to this, because I remember always talking to you about the team that you had when you won in '07. It was when we lost to you guys in 2010. We were the President's Trophy winners, and then we played you guys in the first round, so you guys probably had to be the 8th seed, and we got beat up, we got pushed around. We didn't know what it really took to not only be skillful but also to have some pushback, and we had to learn that. I think good teams need to, and there's a million different teams that you can go through in any sport, because I see it in basketball now that teams have to do that and mature in a way and then just go and dominate. But the team that we went to the finals with, like, we kind of all grew together, when Jumbo came in, we're the same age. Me, Jumbo, Patty Marlowe, Brent Burns, Joe Pavelski's 5 years younger than me, but like we were all pretty much the same age, kind of growing this thing together. And there was a level of maturity that occurred, in a huge level of commitment and a huge culture piece that we had that, you know, I really didn't, I mean, I had to yell at guys sometimes, but the guys ran it. The guys, the culture, our best guys were always in the gym, and I think you could probably attest to that. And I think all good teams have that. But when we got there, it was like, you want to win it, but man, that room was awesome. Like, you want to win it with those guys because you
Mhm.
know how long it took to get there. You know what I mean? If you had I mean, yeah, you'd win a Stanley Cup and you have a room full of shitbags, but at the same time, it just, I gotta believe, yeah, it's fun to win it that way, but like when you have guys like are putting the work in and a building that are holding that culture together, like you really want it for them. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? And then those guys were, I don't know, 18, 19 years in the league at the time too, Patty and Joe. So all the more reason to want to win it, but amazing, amazing experience. And yeah, tough go losing 4 games to 2 to Sid the Kid in that group.
Yeah, but those guys are so close. I'm sure they appreciate it every step of the way, even though it goes by so fast, right? But I'm sure they have, memories of that run that they have. And I remember back in, '07, same thing. Like, we flew into Ottawa and we went right to the hotel and we were staying on a golf course. And I did a team stretch warm up right on like the fairway of the 18th hole, which was outside. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, these guys are gonna like, no, not today, Sean, whatever. But
Yeah,
it was unbelievable. Like, every one of them bought in. I'm talking Pronger,
yeah,
Getsy, all those guys, like they're all just buying into it. I'm like, this is pretty neat,
yeah,
and,
yeah,
and like then it was like it took all the way to the final round to get that in some way somehow
yeah,
without getting some, you know,
yeah.
ripping
Push
along
back.
the way. But
Right, right.
that was, I know what you're talking about there, and that's pretty special, so. And so, okay, so I want to get into, I want to talk about the Warriors, obviously, in your transition to the NBA.
Mhm,
But first, I think it's important that, when I think of the Golden State Warriors, I think of their culture. I think of Steve Kerr,
mhm,
Steph Curry, obviously. I'm sure 95% of the world thinks that as well. But
mhm,
and obviously I know Rick. I've known Rick now since his son Macklin is projected, or he's going to be number one in the NHL draft. Our kids played together in certain stages along the way. Great guy, great therapist, and he's part of that as well. So talk about that culture of the Warriors from an outside perspective, and then we'll get into kind of your
mhm.
inside knowledge a little bit.
So, yeah, the veterans of the group, and you got everybody knows whose names you can plug in there. Like, they stir the drink, like they push the pace on the court in practice. Like they lead with intensity and work, and that extends through into the gym, which is awesome, right? To the tune of like they're the first guys in the gym, and if somebody's lagging behind and they're checking their phone after, like, we get on them.
Mhm.
And if there's any pushback, it's like, you have no leg to stand on about not wanting to work out today, because look who's in there already getting training in after a loss. So that's a big culture piece, which is great. Excuse me, which is great. Um, and then they've learned now at this stage of their careers that they need it. Like it becomes so necessary, like less basketball and more training to stay more resilient as the body ages. And it happened in hockey too. I mean, I don't know how many morning skates the older guys didn't need or didn't do, but they
Mhm.
felt amazing, and they replaced that with some in gym type work. So the song is the same and only the names change, to quote Bon Jovi with that, but it's
Right.
you're dealing with athletes. They're just bigger people, and they got all their teeth, so which is a positive. But programmatically, like we work out after every game, whether we're
What was
homework.
that? What was that word? I never heard that before. Programmatically?
Oh yeah,
I
programmatically.
love that. I'm going to
Yeah,
use that.
yeah. So programmatically, like we'll train after every game. We'll
Love
do
it.
something, whether it be injury prevention or we'll lift. It becomes challenging on the road, but we get it done. Like
Yeah.
I never, not that I didn't believe in it. It's just I didn't like it was a logistical nightmare for me to train. We trained after every game in San Jose, and we had a shitty ass weight room. And it was small, and it was in a bad location, but we got it done. On
Hmm.
the road, it was hard. Like we'd have to set up a training session on a practice day, which I really didn't mind. But here it works. Because the high days are the high days, which are basically around games, and the low days are let's recover, let's address any core imbalances, or do it if you need any more prep or injury prevention, we can do it then. But it's not going to be a high taxing day like a game day or a lift on a game day. So I really like that. It's one of the many, many things I've come to learn here that I always think I'm like, okay, if I go back to hockey, what would I do? What would I change, or how would I implement something from basketball into hockey? And it's really not, there are exercises, but more importantly, there's just systems.
Hmm.
Um, and we can get into that too, which I think is valuable for the hockey listeners, or for to kind of know as a coach too, like how do you look at a totally different sport, a totally different built athlete from what I was used to, and draw parallels and similarities. Um, to get off the soapbox, I think we were basically taught that way with Mike. Like we never just dealt with hockey players. We dealt with so many, and when you work in college, you do too. You
Yeah.
deal with so many different types of athletes. You got to be versatile. And I think truly at heart, you shouldn't specialize as a coach. I say that was just like, I like to train athletes. I just happened to work 16 years in hockey, and now I just
Yeah.
happen to work 2 years in the NBA. If I didn't have that versatility, I wouldn't be here.
I love that because I tell people I'm a strength and conditioning coach
Yeah.
that happened working with hockey players for a long period of time.
Yeah.
Um,
Agreed.
I'm not a hockey strength and conditioning coach. I just happen to be a hockey guy because I spent a lot of time with that sport.
Mhm.
Doesn't mean I can't be a strength and conditioning coach for a football player or a basketball player.
Right. Right.
So I want to
Right.
talk about, you alluded to it a little bit, I guess in hockey, I guess your commonalities with injuries and overuse injuries, you might see some adductor strains or in some low back soreness and some hip problems. In basketball, what what are those kind of trends, I guess, per se? I mean, I'm thinking I'm I could be wrong, but I'm thinking patella tendonitis,
Yeah.
low
Yeah.
back problems, ankles. So what else?
Achilles.
What else do you see that's
Low
along?
back, Achilles, knee, ankle, obviously. Tendon strains around the ankle, which get complicated. It's like two things. Like I always said, like with the ankle, if you have a bad ankle in hockey, like you took a shot off the foot and it's broken. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like there's no,
yeah,
there's not. I don't know if there's any in between. Maybe a high ankle sprain if you get fallen on, but that's pretty
mm,
much it. So knowing the complexities of the ankle and continuing to learn those are obviously important. But you're also dealing with. I remember one of my first meetings. We're going through the roster of players, and we go through pretty much 5 to 7 times a week. We'll meet and go through the roster of guys to check in on guys to see where they're at. And it's awesome. It's a great staff meeting. It's very productive. It keeps us all on the same page. But we're going through the roster and we're talking about someone's shoulder, and there was concern, I think, for an athlete being 2 out of 10. And I think I looked to Rick and I was like, 2 out of 10, like hockey, the damn scale didn't start till 7.
right,
So he
right.
kind of like just started laughing. He's like, welcome to basketball. And I All right, I guess so. But
Yeah.
yeah, so there is a shift, Sean. Like we still do see some hip and adductor type injuries, but not as many, obviously. Your back is different. Like the back, sometimes it can be from compressive forces from them jumping, landing, pounding, rather than kind of rotational stuff where guys in hockey, they're in a tussle, they fall and they rotate and they strain it, right? Or just from shooting and things like that. So there's a little bit of a different concern. Don't see as many shoulders. We don't see as many concussions,
Mm,
obviously. If it's a shoulder, it's because somebody kind of fell on the floor or whatever.
reaching. Yeah.
Yeah, but we do, we're really with our kind of our plan of exercises around injury prevention, we're always addressing the hamstring, we're always addressing the adductor, we're always addressing knee tendon type work, whether it be like the Spanish squat or a single leg wall sit, and we're always addressing like the calf as well. Um, and balance type work comes in our warm-ups and stuff like that. We just utilize that time to address that. But from an injury prevention standpoint, we'll either do reps, we'll either do isometric holds, we'll either do overcoming isometric type holds, or we'll do something eccentrically for all of those kind of areas, you know? So
Well,
but yeah, it's, I mean, I can look back and say, well, we really focused on the adductor, we really focused on the core. I wasn't too aware of like hamstring strains, because you just don't have them in hockey. You know
mhm,
what I mean? You just don't have that component because they're not running. So,
right.
um, but it's a cool, different way of thinking about it for me, at least.
Yeah, I think it's a whole different animal
Yeah,
as soon as the foot hits the ground, right? Because we don't
100%.
in hockey, we have that foot locked down and that
Yep.
basically a cast, and it's not touching the ice, the blade is. So I think it's like I said, it's a whole different chain of events that
Yeah.
happen in the NBA in basketball. That's great. So talk to me about kind of logistically in terms of, the day-to-day operations in the NBA versus the NHL. Like I know we talked about some of that at breakfast the other day, but tell
Yep.
the listeners about some of that stuff. If you wouldn't
Well,
mind.
game day, you still have this the similar event to morning skate is like the morning shoot around. And that's getting used sparingly, just like morning skate is, for those hockey listeners who know, like coaches don't morning skate anymore, same holds true in basketball. Not a lot of coaches utilize the shoot around for a whole team shoot around. Beginning of the year, yeah, but not at this
Mhm.
time of the year. They'll use that time for the extras, like the healthy scratch guys or the extra players who aren't playing in the lineup on a given night in basketball to go and do some work on the court, because they won't see a lot of they won't see any action on the court during the game. So they go and get their shooting work in, or maybe 1-on-1, 2v2 type work, you know. Um, and then the big difference with basketball as opposed to hockey on a game day too is that you have shooting times that lead up to tip off.
Okay.
Whereas hockey, everybody warmed up together.
Yeah.
So, it made it easy, kind of, and so the uniqueness is like we'll take a couple guys through who are in that first shooting time, warm them up, and then kind of move on to the next group, and then move on to the next group. So you're constantly going through this progression of warm up with particular guys, and they have their nuances and whatnot, and their specific things, whether it be based on structure, injury history, or things that they like to do, to ensure that they're ready to play the game. So there's that piece, which is interesting. It takes a little bit of time, but at the same, in the same breath, it's like, all right, it makes sense to me. It's not like we're gonna get a group warm up going here, or everybody's gonna be on the ice at the same time. So that leads into tip off, and then during the game, I'm pulling guys off the bench who are getting ready to go into the rotation and make sure they do a little bit more warm up, because much like in hockey, you're sitting on a bench, right? You're
Right.
sitting, you can get cold and stiff, believe it or not. So we hand out a lot of heat packs, and then they come off to the side of the bench. There's a bike, and we'll do some kind of movement stuff in the tunnel or whatever.
So do
So
you know ahead of time when they're coming into the game?
generally, yes. Generally, yes.
Okay.
Coach Kerr has everything mapped out in terms of
Really?
rotation, minutes. Yeah, yep. Um, but that being said, if shit goes sideways, then it's like a guy who you didn't think was going to get minutes at a certain time could get put in early. So there's always this kind of stay ready element,
Stay on your
don't
toes.
don't get pouty about your lack of minutes. Like, do you got to be ready because shit can change. And same thing in hockey. It's like if you're a fourth line guy and you're sitting there, the
Yeah,
game changes, you get a shift and you do really good, you may get more time. So, I always tell our guys like don't get caught up in it. Just be in the moment and be focused on the game, to keep you engaged.
that's interesting. Yeah, I'd always tell our guys who weren't playing as much to get on the ice during the media timeouts if they could.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think
and that's like that's tough. Like at least in basketball, they could do that during timeouts. With hockey, I think they can only can't go during whistles, but they can go during the TV
I
timeouts, which
think
is
so. I could
yeah.
be wrong, but so talk about that shoot around period. Like I guess in comparison to hockey, if a player knows they're not playing, assistant coach might take them through some conditioning. In basketball, like you don't know if people aren't going to play that night, correct? Does that make sense? Like, do you know if like some people aren't coming off the bench at all?
No, they'll know.
Okay,
They'll know by that time. So that's when you tap the guys in the morning and say, or the night before, say, hey, listen, like we're gonna get some extra shooting in to kind of keep your basketball conditioning up, do some drills to get you around the court, and then we may simulate like a 3-on-3, with
got it.
coaches. So there's player development coaches that will step in and play because they still can play, but it's
Sure.
pretty cool. And then the four players who aren't going to be in the lineup or see minutes, then they get a little gameplay action, which that was one of the things like I love about basketball. Like I love about this, like the NBA. They have coaching staff of I don't know 5, and then that's Steve's group, and then Steve has another group of player development coaches who can actually run the drills and play if needed. Which
So
hockey
then,
has player development, but not that many.
right,
But what the cool thing is, like on a day, like if we have guys who aren't seeing a lot of minutes to keep their gameplay up, to keep, high speed running up, to keep sprinting up, to keep cutting up, to keep full court and half court play up for them so they stay sharp. Like you simulate games. And I do a lot with the scheduling of that and the timing of that and the planning of it, which has been cool for me. Because I was doing something similar in San Jose with hockey, with the players there in hockey, with the coaches, but I never really dove as deep as I am now, which is cool. So like it was one of the, like if I ever go back to hockey kind of moments, like I would try to play, with the coaches and the healthy scratch guys, maybe a 2-on-2 or a 3-on-3. I think that's the most you can get out of the numbers of it. But I'd blow the whistle. I wouldn't let him go play shinny for 2.5 minutes and it looked like dog shit by the end of it. You know what I mean?
right, right.
Keep it crisp, keep it purposeful, keep it guys focused. Like that's your shift. Like let's keep the pace up really high because we're not going to see this 2.5 minute, bullshit skate. So let's
Mhm.
tighten up there. And then that would be the equivalent of half court because you're in zone, right?
Yep.
And then to get the full court or full ice, 200 up, 200 back, you could simulate a drill in defensive zone coverage, get up the ice, do another drill or a battle that's going to simulate that, and then do a breakout, and then you can do
Yeah.
reps for it. If you have the numbers, then play full ice, would be great. But if you can't come across those numbers, how do you get, you know, full ice skating, sprinting, high speeds that those guys are going to need? And I will say that's like the cool piece of the data. We're in this friggin' data age, right? There's so much information out there. There's so much sports science, high performance, whatever have you,
Mhm.
the a valuable thing I believe in is to just we have this technology that the players are getting monitored during games, so you really know the cost of doing business. So I want to know how fast they go, but I want to know how many times to do it. They do it because if they're not in the lineup, I want to try to get that many sprint exposures for that particular player. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely.
So that's
Absolutely.
one of the good things that does come out of it. Like we
Yeah,
could guess arbitrarily, like, all right, he's gonna have 20 shifts, so we're gonna make him sprint 20 times. Like, all right, yeah, but how fast is he going?
right.
And how do we blend changes of direction with open ice sprinting and how many should be accelerations? And just cool variables that you can really drill down on. How to be really specific, because how many times did you hear I know you've heard this a billion times, right? How many times do you hear like, oh, well, the games can only get me in shape. The games can only get me in shape.
Game shape. Yeah.
Yeah, game shape. And I'm like, yeah, I'm like, I'm listening. I hear you. But at the same time, now it's like, I come here and I'm like, all right, these guys are planning games for these players who aren't in the lineup. I really like this, you know?
Yeah.
I
What's
want, so you could, there's so many ways to do it, Sean. Like it's a cool, it's just been a cool thing for me to kind of look into and grow as a coach to know how far you can take it, you know?
I like that, and I think about all the morning skates when, player X or Y isn't playing that night, an assistant coach might pull them aside and they might play 3-on-3 with the backup goalie with the other assistant coaches and, or maybe they will condition with purpose that day.
Yeah,
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, like that's
And
and
that's okay too. Like you could still, get them on the line and sprint. Like we still
sure.
do high speed running 3/4 court to make sure that they get some uninterrupted sprinting in.
Mhm.
Um, and that's okay. Like you can do line drills, but just don't make that like the whole thing. You know what I mean?
And there's also I also think in the NHL there's the mental component. There's a guy who might be healthy scratched who's maybe he's never been healthy scratched before, or stuff like that where it might be a shock that they're not playing that night, or it's a little different, so you kind of just can't. I love what you're saying. I think that is phenomenal, but I guess you just can't bury the, I guess in hockey terms, bag the guy because
Yeah.
he's out of the lineup for the first time. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
the
that's the
mental
time.
component, right?
I know we I fell into that too. Um, trying to decide, okay, are we looking forward or are we looking back, you know?
Yeah, right. Right.
So it's like tonight.
When's the next game, right? That's
Right.
the
So tonight, technically, we we played yesterday and we played tonight. So we're on a back to back. Before yesterday's game, we got the group to go and play. That was that Monday? Yeah, that was Monday. So they played in a game situation, right? They simulated gameplay, and or, yeah, so they simulated gameplay. We go into the Miami game. All they needed to do was shoot, right?
Mhm.
Now today they'll do their shooting, but tomorrow we're gonna before we leave Orlando, we're gonna have a gameplay group that goes and plays in the morning. They'll go over to we have a shoot around time. We have a practice time. Probably won't have the whole group go over there. We'll just go with the guys who didn't play, you know?
Got it. Got
So
it.
you have to find those pockets of time, and game day is usually good to do it, but as long as our head coach agrees with that timing, just in case nothing happens to anybody, in between shoot around and game time where somebody else has to step in.
Right.
Uh, but in hockey, like, I can't think, I can only think of a couple times, believe it or not, where guys weren't in the lineup and on the next practice day, they actually did something in the skate, you know?
Mhm.
So there's a looking forward or looking back approach to how you want to do it. And then when you get threes and fours and sixes and 5 games and 7 nights or 8 nights, then it gets a little hairy. It's like, all right, well,
Oh my God, yeah.
how are we planning this out, you know?
Well, even for the guys who aren't in the lineup that much,
Right.
they,
Well, those are the guys, yeah, I'm thinking about, you know?
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's awesome, man. This has been great. Well, man, I thank you so much for this. I learned a lot about the NBA, and also it's the same, but it's different, right? Then
Yeah.
it's the nuances, whatever, and it's just
I
really cool.
the cool thing is too, I will say, like, we really didn't dive too much in the strength piece, but before we go, like, like we lift the guys, like we have our primary exercises are a heavy belt squat of like 5 or 550 on the Sword X belt squat that attaches to our rack. We trap our deadlift guys. Beginning of the year we spend more time doing it, off season for sure, but we'll trap our jump squat guys. We'll do RFE, dumbbell RFE. So heavy dumbbell bench. So we're working these guys. It's not like we're just doing band work and shit. And these guys like to lift. That's the
Love it.
thing, which is cool. Like it's in their DNA, it's in their blood, and they do feel confident when they're strong. And there's there's areas, if you're not about, I mean, I liked basketball before I came here, but I didn't really look at it the way I did hockey. And now that I have, like, there's a big physical piece that these guys got to be strong, not just fast and conditioned and skillful and with the shooting, but you go in the paint, like it's like going to the front of the net,
Right.
100%. So they got to be strong. They can't be weak and get pushed around. So there's some cool pieces like that.
I love that. And I think a comparable would be the NHL. You'll see it soon when the playoffs start. I'm sure it's the same in the NBA. Like the game takes it up another notch, right?
Absolutely.
It's
Yeah.
tighter, it's more physical, it's
There's a faster pace going up and down the court,
yeah,
which you can easily tell in hockey, like, oh, man, this is playoff hockey, like how fast on the
absolutely.
rush teams are and how they're attacking the net.
Mistake free, all that. Like you see it becomes the game just becomes shortened with more physicality and speed and less mistakes, I guess, right?
Yep.
I guess it's
That's
the same thing. Well, awesome, man. Well, yeah, that this has been great, Mike. Just learning about, the NBA, the culture, and seeing what you're up to, most importantly for me. I love you, buddy. You're a good friend. And
Yeah, I mean, man.
thanks for
Same,
coming
same
on.
here. Yep.
Thanks for coming on, and I appreciate this. And we'll definitely stay in touch. Okay, bud?
Absolutely. Thanks for
All right.
having me.
Thanks, buddy. Take care.
Bye.
Bye.